And I believe we are live. We'd like to welcome everyone. Yes, we are live. So welcome everybody. 8:30 in the UK, 3:30 in New York. We're very, very privileged to have with us today none other than Rabbi Y.Y. Rubinstein, a renowned international, very sought after speaker and friend who has actually been with us in the year 2014 and beforehand and after many years joining us at the Tawil weekend away in the Oxford Belfry. We really pleasure to have you, Rabbi, international speaker. You've been broadcasting on the BBC to millions for years before going off to America and giving over your wisdom as a lecturer to the Gateways organization in New York and beyond, writing and just finishing your 12th book, like the 12 Shvatim. Welcome, Rabbi. How are you?
Very, very much, Rabbi. How are you? How nice to see you again.
Thank God. Thank God. We're doing all right here in London. And Baruch Hashem, we have Zoom. So it's great to have everybody on board. And today we're going to be discussing relationships. Now, when you were with us in 2014, you saw the crowd that we had. I don't know if you remember back then, but we had an interesting Q&A at the end with all the crowds, and people had so many great questions. Fast forward 6 years, and thank God we've seen a massive increase in energy, in Jewish energy, and a lot of the couples that you saw that were newly married then, thank God, have 2 or 3 kids now and are happily married. And we want to discuss really, love and relationships are so key. People travel across worlds. People are prepared to move cities for love. It's in every single book and movie. What is the secret? Can we ask you? What is the secret to real love?
There's a famous rabbi called Rabbi Dessler, and he's got a whole sheer lecture and very, very deep perspective in this. He says that everybody is born with an overwhelming love for one person more than anybody else in the world. And that one person is, of course, ourselves. Now, in my case, it's justified. But because we love ourselves, the more he says in a relationship, well, he puts it like this. How do you come to love somebody? Is it the case that you love them, and as a consequence, you give to them, you spend your time, your money, your effort, or you give your time, your money, and your effort, and you come to love them, or do they both simultaneously arrive? And he says, no, it's the fact that the more you give to somebody, the more you come to love them, because the more you give to them, the more you see of yourself in the person. And as you already start from a perspective of loving yourself, then you see that love for yourself in them as well. And that sounds just a little bit, almost technical. What happened to the romance? Where was the orchestra? But the truth is, please don't build a relationship on the Hollywood model. Love at first sight. I don't want to rock anybody's boat here and have all sorts of people being very angry with me. But there is no such thing as love at first sight. I can prove this to you. Maybe do you remember that old song, the old Hollywood song? Some enchanted evening, you may meet a stranger. You may meet a stranger across a crowded room, and somehow you know even then. No, you don't! That's insanity! You've never met the person in your entire life! How can you love them? You could be attracted to them. You could lust after them. But love them? To love somebody is to know somebody. And to know somebody and become one with that person. That takes effort. So how you come to love somebody is by putting a lot of work into that relationship. And let me just end this little big answer, with one very important thing. The absolute essential word for the success of any relationship begins with a C. And that word is commitment.
Oh, very nice.
The more you're committed, the more likely it is to work. Because if you're committed and there's a problem, then you'll take it to the rabbi, the Rebbitzin, you'll take it to the marriage guidance counselor, whoever is the appropriate person, because you want it to work. When couples come to see me because their marriage is in trouble, I split the issues into 3 categories. Number 1, he leaves the top off the toothpaste, or she does. This is big stuff. I normally am convinced that I can solve such problems. Problem number 2 is a big issue, a serious big issue. And both are committed to try and solving it, then I think I can help. Problem number 3 is a big issue, and neither or only one want to solve it. That's a divorce. So the more you're committed to making it work, the more the chances, the more the likelihood, the probability that it will work.
Mm-hmm. I heard once a beautiful idea on this idea of commitment. You know, we always say that a ish v'isha, a man and a woman, you hear it at every wedding, when a man and a woman get together correctly, so you have inside an ish is a man, you've got the yud, inside the isha, you've got a hey. Yud and hey is Hashem's name. God's name, we say, hallelujah, praise be the Lord, right? There's only one problem, because God's name isn't just Yud K, it's actually, there's a Vav and a Hey in it as well. Where's the Vav and a Hey? I believe it's a Khatam Sofer that says something beautiful. He says, it's to do with what you just mentioned. What is essential in a marriage? It's commitment. Where do we see the commitment, the first happening really in all the officiality of the marriage? That's under the chuppah, when the rabbi says, okay, where's your commitment? The ketuvah. The ketubah is where the man is writing all his obligations to the woman, that he's going to take care of her, and he's going to clothe her, going to feed her, have a good, proper relationship, etc. Isn't it interesting? Because ketubah, really, it should be written ketav. Ketav is what it's written, like a michtav or ketav, but it's written ketubah. Ketubah's got a vav and a hey. It's got the vav and the hey. So the vav and the hey is the essential part. The commitment is the essential part in the marriage. And I think what you're saying is so essential. It brings me on to my next question. We're living in 2020, and at Tawil we come across a lot of people, and we have couples that have met online. Believe it or not, they've met with the Jewish online dating, and they met at also all sorts of the Jewish Tinder, whatever it's called, that people have met like that. Now they're far and few between, but I seem to be coming across more and more people that have done that. Given that they are doing that, we have a lot of singles as well. Is that the way forward, in your opinion? What is your opinion, Jewishly, about dating? Should people be emphasizing, should they be flicking through the pictures or the profiles in a 2020 environment to find their real match?
So I'm going to tell you something which is going to end my career as a rabbi.
I didn't tell you it would be easy here today.
No. But this is it. This is where the name Rubinstein is going to be dragged through the number. Somebody came to see me, this is a number of years ago, here in New York, and he came to see me because this fellow had been married, was divorced, I think it was a couple of kids, and he was looking to remarry. Exceedingly nice person. I liked him a lot. And he had a lot of qualities and a lot of talents. And so basically, after spending an evening with me and my wife, and I was having a good impression of him, we undertook to help him find, the second wife, or perhaps the real wife. Sorry?
It's a big mitzvah.
It's a big mitzvah. So basically, I undertook to do this. So I have a list of young ladies and young men on my computer just now. And I've actually made...
It's to know.
Yeah, it's good to know. And I've made 55 shidduchim in my career. Now, I'm not shadchan, so please, if you're watching...
49 at Tal, 49.
Oh, you're really ex-Kol Kabod. But like you, because when I was at university and I was the student chaplain in Manchester, I knew lots of young men and young women, and it was very easy to assess and bring them together. Anyway, so I said to myself, I'll help this young fellow. And I sent him the resume with a picture of a young lady who I thought was a good match. And immediately came the response, no, it's not for him. The immediacy of the reply was surprising, but fine, okay. And then another one, and again it was a no. And then the third one, and again it was a no. But it was so immediate. I mean, how could he possibly know that it was a no? He'd never met the girls. Then I realized the thing that was really he was focused on was their appearance, the beauty of the girl. And this is where I lose my reputation. So I went on to Google and I typed in top 10 Hollywood actresses. And the list of the top 10 Hollywood actresses appeared. Most of them I'd never heard of. And there's one who's got a very funny name, which I can't actually remember. But she was undoubtedly a stunningly beautiful woman. You don't get to be the number top 10.
You see,
Hollywood
an eye
actresses.
of the beholder.
That's right. And don't forget,
in the olden days, don't forget, beauty meant a plum. Certain, if with a lady, it was the plumber, the bigger
the aesthetic was different. Absolutely.
Completely.
For the man as well. Plump meant you were wealthy, and wealthy meant good. However, don't forget the Gemara and Megillah, which talks about the three most beautiful women in history, four most beautiful women in history. And so it was, if I remember rightly, it was Sarah, Abigail, Rochov, and then Esther. And the Gemara says, Esther, not Esther. She wasn't beautiful. She was green, had a green appearance. So she says, okay, in that case, Vashti. Vashti, the anti-heroine of the Megillah, was, I mean, if you walked in with her in your arm, as it were, people go, wow. But she was evil. On the outside, she was beautiful. Anyway, so I got this lady. It was a very sneistic picture, just took her head, and I put this on the resume, which I made up of a young woman. It was an amalgam, sent it off to him. And he said, nah. And at this point, I realized I couldn't help him. Now, I'm not telling you what he looked like. And it's a very interesting, see, I have to tell you that the problems generally tend to be male-led more than female-led. We men tend to be profoundly stupid when it comes to this stuff. But anyway, nobody was beautiful enough for him, so I couldn't help. So the first thing is you see somebody across, a camera as we are looking at each other now, then fine. I mean, as long as you're basically attracted to somebody, I think you can get to the commitment stage. I think that works. My oldest daughter got engaged after, now, and I'm not Hasidic, so just 3 meetings. And when I got the message from Jerusalem of getting engaged, I was like, 3 meetings? My youngest daughter, I've got 2, said she wouldn't do that to me. No, she had 6 meetings over 3 days, and then they got engaged. But in both these cases, there's something very interesting, which takes me directly.
How many meetings did you have?
Sorry?
How many meetings did you have?
I don't know.
Question from the
I don't know. Yes, because I've been married twice, my late wife, and I can't actually remember either. And I hope my wife is not watching this, or I'm in deep trouble. Anyway, so the interesting thing is, in both cases, well, let's say my oldest daughter, it turns out that her father was a chavrusa of mine in Gateshead Yeshiva back in the day. He comes from the exact same sort of background. In other words, Rabbi, no money, in education. And they were brought up in very similar ways, in very similar families, one in Gateshead and one in Manchester. They had so much in common, and they both wanted to get married. In other words, they were committed, that all that was needed to be established was that they found each other physically attractive and met and had a lot, they liked each other. Then with that C word, with that commitment, then fine. Why couldn't they get married? Are you going to go out with each other for a year, 2 years? And the funny thing is, as you know, the statistics show that couples who live with each other as man and wife before they get married have a higher divorce rate than people who didn't, for a very simple reason. Why didn't you get married straight away? When the guy's not getting married straight away, he's making a very simple statement about this relationship. I've got 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out the door. Because men have this crazy idea that they're looking gorgeous anyway, like the guy I told you about, forever, and they don't have to commit. Women know that there's a commitment thing. They've got a biological time clock. So I think you could meet easily in 2020 online. Why not? After all, a shidduch is just a meeting. In the old days, a discotheque or a club is just a meeting. A party is just a meeting. But then you've got to take it to the depth to understand what the person's really like. And if you're the same person going in the same direction with the same values, and are attracted to each other and are committed, of course it could work. It could work over Skype, it could work over Zoom, or as Hasidim say, Zim, and why not?
It's amazing. We talk about shidduchim, these meetings where you don't really know the person and you haven't, it's a blind date. But this kind of thing goes on a lot in India, and they've actually done studies. And in India, they go through all these blind dates and these shidduchim, and they get together. And the studies show that people that met outside, like normal people in England, in America, in the bars, online, they're happy as well. Everybody's happy. But there's a curve. And the first 3 years, the people that met, got to know each other in the bar and this or the other are happy. And the people of Shidduchim are just finding their kind of way. But afterwards, the paths kind of cross in a way that the happiness of the people that met via Shidduchim is actually stronger. And one of the reasons is what you mentioned before, this idea of commitment from the beginning. You know what you're going in for. You already understand what you're going in for. So when you're going out on a shidduch, you're getting to know the person. You go to a nice environment. It's not just restaurants and things like that. You get a nice environment, but also you are, you know where you're heading together. You're sharing life goals, which is much more important than the picture that you see on the profile, which a person can go through. And it's interesting you mentioned this idea of 1 foot in and 1 foot out, because I kind of think of it like this. If tomorrow you were in an apartment and the landlord says, no problem, I'm happy to have you here, but you'll pay per day and I can kick you out any day and you have the same rights, you can go any day. Are you going to be painting the apartment, investing in it, bringing big furniture or not? And it's the same with the relationships. We come across the young adults, the students all the time. They're like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I'm going out with this girl, but I'm still looking, or I'm this, I'm not sure. I need to keep all my options open. And then you advance in their lives. 5 years later, they're still keeping their options open. And it's that jump, it's that initial jump that's so important.
I have a very surprising friend. You may have heard of him, Mr. Ray Hill, one of the founders of the post-war British Nazi Party. Oh. And he became an enormous activist against the Nazis, British Nazis. And he became a very good friend of mine. He was at all my children's weddings. We worked on campus together for many years. And I remember when I got married for the second time after my late wife passed away, he phoned me up and in his very northern accent, he said, why? He said, let me give you a piece of advice. I said, go ahead, Ray. He said, comparison is the death of second marriages. And that was very, very good advice. Because if you compare and contrast, but think about think of 2020, or think of the world where you're invited to have multiple relationships and maybe indeed live together, as couples so often do. Then it falls to bits and then they move on. The more relationships you are in, the more you have opportunity for comparing and contrasting. And that's never healthy. There's always somebody who's better at this or that or the other thing. Oh, she was better at sports, or she shared interests with me in music, or whatever it was, she cooked better. That's the death of a relationship. It's actually like in my kids, going in when you're young, 20, 21, and committed, and then you're not, then that's the focus, just like you were saying, you're focused on that, and that allows it to blossom, and it blocks out everything else. That's why, of course, as you know, when you're talking about the chuppah, why the wife goes around the khatan 7 times. It's like she's building a wall. She's going to keep the world out there away from her husband. He's going to be focused on me. I'm going to be focused on him. That's what you want in a relationship.
When you in the times of Jericho, as you mentioned, the Jews went round 7 times.
Yeah.
So they say there's 2 pshatim. The one that you just said is she's building a wall around him. But there's also this idea that the Jews went around Jericho 7 times. What happened when they went around 7 times? Jericho's the first place that they conquered in the land of Israel. Right. And they go around and they're blowing the shofar every day, and on the 7th day, 7 times and everything. And then the walls just crumbled. Right. So on the one hand, she's building the wall around him, but on the other hand, she's breaking that wall, those comparisons that he had, and those this, that, she's breaking his, so that she can penetrate, be part of his life now. Yeah, to get rid of all his individuality, and they can build together. I think we have a lot of people that are asking, okay, fine, Rabbi, when I'm 21, I'm supposed to get committed and it's nice to get into these kind of relationships, and no, but I don't really know when I'm 21 what I want to do with my life. And I get through confusion and I'm influenced by outside influences, and we're young and we party, and we get to 30 or whatever it is, and we wake up and I look around and I just don't see the right girl, or I don't see the right guy. What kind of advice can you give to the older singles? It could be 30, it could be 40 and beyond. What kind of pinpoint advice is there? It could be practical advice, could be prayer as well as action. What kind of advice can we give them?
Well, I don't want to be accused of being frum. So I'm going to miss out the prayer bit. I'll leave that with you, Rabbi Tawil, because I know and respect you anyway.
It's going live.
I have a much more, really, because, as you said at the beginning, I get the great privilege, well, not at the moment because of coronavirus, but usually traveling around the world and speaking to Jews all over the place. And normally, I've only really got two things to say. And the first one, the most important one, is what it says at the beginning of Pirkei Avot, when it says, Asa lecha Rav. If you want to succeed in anything in your life, if you want to study mathematics, you want to learn the violin or the guitar, dance, whatever it is you want to do, scuba diving, then you need a teacher. And the more important the project, the more talented and reliable the teacher that you need. Well, the most important project in your life is your life. So if you need a teacher for all those other areas, you certainly need a teacher in your life. And indeed, the way you put it is exactly what people feel. You know, I don't know, and I'm not sure. And of course you're not sure, because nobody sees themselves objectively. Nobody sees themselves clearly. So should I go out with this girl? Do you know the number of, I mentioned a number of shidduchim that I'd made. At least 3 or 4 come to mind when they were unsure and they came to speak to me, and either individually or together. And another person looking at it, was able to advise them to get over that uncertainty. Mm-hmm. So everybody needs an advisor in their life, because the most important thing in your life is you. So if you want to take up playing the violin when you're young, it will be easy, right? Your fingers move much easier. If you want to do it when you're 40, which you were saying before, then it's harder. Then you're going to need a more specialized teacher who knows, you know, your fingers don't exactly bend the way they do when you're 14 or 15. Mm. So that's what everybody needs. And certainly when it comes to this stuff, as I said before, if that fellow, well, instead of, you know, rejecting these 3 girls, had gone out with them and then asked me and helped me to guide them, then I think he would have been happily married. Somebody needed to say to him right at the beginning, your approach is fundamentally wrong. But you can't say that to somebody unless they want to hear it. We really need to want to hear stuff about ourselves. We need to find somebody who's good. A rabbi, a rebbitzin. Asa lecha Rav is in the masculine, of course. Asa lecha. Asa lach rebbitzin is probably the female version of it. A woman should find an advisor who's a woman, because a woman will understand a woman's issues, problems, worries much better than a man. And a man needs to turn to a man. But all of us need a guide. So in this very complicated world, where it so works against young people finding each other and settling down. And commitment is certainly not high in the agenda of modern culture. Then please get hold of a good teacher. And I'm sure.
How do you get hold of a good teacher? How would you advise? We have this. It's so difficult nowadays. I find as a rabbi as well, we connect with so many people, rabbis are so inundated, etc. But how would you as a student or a young professional, you're hearing your own talk right now, okay, Rabbi, I want to get a hold of a rabbi. Is it just, I give him a call, I'm looking for a shidduch? It's much more than that. Obviously, it's to connect, it's to get to know them, it's to be part of them, guidance. What is it? How do I, let's flip it around. How do I connect to you?
Brilliant. Oh, you don't have to connect to me. But it's really quite simple when you think about this, and particularly as we're having this conversation over Zoom, and that sort of really starts to answer the question. Look, let me give you an example like this. If I said to you before, which I did, the most important thing in your life is your life, let's take that a little stage further. Suppose your life was in danger, or suppose somebody you loved, let's say you're married, you've got children, and the doctor says, this child has got a life-threatening condition. Now, the leading expert in the field for the disease that your child has lives in Washington, D.C., or Johannesburg, South Africa, or Australia, and you're a Jewish parent. Would anything stop you getting to that doctor, that specialist, to save your child's life? Absolutely not, because you're a Jew. And because you love that person. Mm-hmm. Now, just like there are doctors who are specialists in oncology and doctors who are specialists in all the whole gambit of medical conditions, and lawyers who are specialists in criminal law and tort and all that sort of stuff. You've got to say to yourself, my problem is Shidduch. Who is the rabbi or the Rebbetzin or the couple who are really got fabulous reputation in this field? Don't phone up a rabbi or a dayan who's an expert in kashrus because you want to get married, right? Yeah, just take the kala, insult her for 1 hour, and that's not his field. You got to go to the lawyer if you want, inheritance law, who's an expert in inheritance law, immigration law, the immigration law. You got to go to the rabbi or the rebbetzin, who is the expert and really knows what they're talking about. How do you find them? Well, allow me to employ the American phrase, which I've been trying to master since I've been here for 10 years. Don't quite pronounce it properly, but I'll give it a shot. Duh. How would you find the lawyer in the field that you need for your inheritance thing? You would ask around. Ask other people who've had experience. Oh, he was really good, and that was the guy for me, and this was really bad. And once you've found out who are the leading players in your field, go for it. Oh, what if he lives in Australia? Well, as the Hasidim say, use Zim, and you can phone, you can email, you can Skype. Oh, but they're very busy. I know they're very busy. That's why you're a Jew. Be a nudnik. What's the Arabic word or the Ladino word for it? You must know. I can only think of 3 Arabic words, and none of them are appropriate. That you want to be. Fight for you. Fight for this.
Yeah, you got to be a chacham yourself. But it's also important when you're fighting is to become part of their lives. Asay lecha Rav isn't just about they're going to find you a shidduch and that's it. It's to actually go via their guidance, to hearken to the words and to accept. It's got to be something that you feel, that you connect to that rabbi or rebbetzin that you were talking about. And
that's beautiful because you just said it. I think that's in the words, asay lecha. The beauty is you get to choose. When my students, when I was the campus rabbi in Manchester with 3,000 over 25 years, gosh, if they found a different rabbi that they felt the chemistry was right for them with him, I couldn't care less. I want them to get the best advice, and you get to choose. It's like you get to choose the person you marry. Then you get to choose the rabbi or the rebbetzin if you're a woman. Then choose. Then find the one that works for you. It's your choice.
Okay, that's so important nowadays. Asay lecha Rav, and a lot of people are actually lacking in this because nowadays, what do people do if they've got a question? They Google it. Okay, they go to the Google rabbi. And the problem with going to the Google rabbi is, firstly, you don't know where the sources are coming from, whether it's from the traditional sources or novelty. And secondly, obviously there's various opinions, but there's no personalization over there. When you make yourself a rabbi, when you got somebody who's in the town, you can go to them for Shabbat. We have so many guests, for Shabbat and for Yom Tov, and you get to know them. And then, okay, they start asking Shidduchim, but they ask you other questions. So you get to know them as a rabbi, as a person as well. And your wife knows the girls, etc. Then there's a lot to be done over there. I want to ask you a question. On Shidduchim, when a person's going in a relationship, going to a certain event, and I'm looking to get married. It's a vague question, but what should be top on my agenda? Okay, when I'm looking for the right girl, the right guy, is there anything specific that I should be looking for? Is there something that is unilateral amongst all couples that we should look for? Of course, everybody's got different tastes and different appearances and what have you. But is there something, a certain midah, something? What is it that we should be looking for when I'm going out there? I've decided I want to be serious. I want to find the right girl. I want to find the right guy. What should I go out and look for?
I think the answer is quite simply kindness. If the person is a kind person, I think that which defines kindness is a willingness to give to others. If you're going to marry somebody, the Yiddish word is Übergegebenkeit, which is a lot of syllables, a willingness to give over to somebody else. That's an essential ingredient when it comes to marriage, that you want to give of yourself and give from yourself, and sometimes give up from yourself for the other person. If you find somebody, of course, as we said before, you've got to be physically attracted to the girl or the boy or the man or the woman. That's very, very crucial, right? The whole that intimate side of marriage is fundamental. And if you don't find the girl or the boy attractive, then that's not really going to work. But please don't hang in there waiting for the most beautiful woman in the world. That's always assuming that you're the most beautiful man in the world. My general experience is that the guys are very picky, even if they look like a rhinoceros. However,
how do you crack that nut? How do you crack?
Sorry?
How do you
look?
crack
Think
about,
at the end
of the day, people are always looking, and unfortunately, and then they end up settling for the second best at the age of 45 because they didn't understand what you just said when they were 25, 30, 35, and it's difficult.
Right, look, if you're 45, it's going to be tougher. Yeah, indeed, you might have regrets. I should have done this when I was 25. Look, forget that. Make a go of now. If you're going to look and live your life full of regrets of what you should have done, how stupid you were when you were young, I would not like to review too much of my stupid decisions when I was a young man. They're just obviously incredibly embarrassing. But you know what? If the girl it's a strange thing that, let's say a girl walks, I'm a man, so I'll use a male example. A girl walks into the room just now, never seen her before. You immediately know she's attractive. Right? But the funny thing is, let's say you're on a date with this girl. Let's say she's got a mole on her cheek here, or two moles, right? So maybe that's considered a blemish. But once you come to know the girl, and the more you're committed, and the more you give to the girl, the more you see of yourself in her, and she in you. The funny thing is, when you come to love that girl, what about those two moles? Oh, well, that is the girl. That's part of the person that you love. It doesn't have to be that she is totally perfect, and doesn't have to be the most handsome person in the world. And my experience, strangely, is that people you would never put together, and you would never think that strangely, sometimes the most handsome men are married to girls who are just ordinary, and sometimes the most beautiful girls are married to men that are just ordinary, but they love each other. That can work. So work on the assumption that she doesn't have to be perfect. She doesn't have to be whoever that lady is from Hollywood. I've remembered her name. Blake Lively. Gosh, what a strange name. Anyway, so you don't have to be Blake Lively, and you don't have to be Brad Pitt. That's probably way out of date, but you get the idea. They don't have. That doesn't be where it's essential. Then ask yourself the question: how do you want to be treated? What sort of person treats you the nicest? And the answer is a kind person. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a good marriage if you marry a kind person. And I think, and incidentally, my favorite commentator is the Al Sheikh HaKodesh, and of course, you as a Sephardi will know that name very well. And he points out that the Torah says, the Pirkei Avot says, Shlosha Dvarim ha'olam hamed. The world stands on three things: Torah, Avodah, v'Gimel Chasadim. Now, Torah, of course, is Yaakov, Gimel Chasadim is Yitzchak, and then Chesed was Avram. So it's the wrong way around. Avram came first. So why is it that way around? He says, because if we fail at Torah and we fail at Avodah, our prayers, which is hard, as long as there's still Chesed, the Jewish people go on. Hashem likes Chesed. And I think that's the defining Jewish midah anyway. It comes from the first Jew, Chesed. Kindness, though, tells you the sort of relationship you're going to have. Just say to yourself, what sort of woman do you want, or what sort of man do you want to greet you when you come home? Somebody who's thinking of you and is a kind person, or someone that's thinking about themselves? The people thinking about themselves usually don't end up in happy marriages. And remember, a happy marriage is heaven on earth, and an unhappy marriage is hell on earth. So look for a kind person. I would say a gentle person. And of course, you've got to be attracted to them. And then commit. You'll make it work.
I think that's beautiful. I think that fits in with what you mentioned in the beginning with Rav Dessler and giving, creating love. As you know, ahava comes from the word love. Ahav means to give, as you mentioned. And of course, King David says, Olam chesed yibaneh. The whole world was created with chesed. I have my own take on what's going on, obviously, in the world at the moment. And You know, when the world was destroyed, there's only been one time, there will only be one time when the world has been destroyed. That was in the time of Noach. And Noach finds himself in this lockdown situation for a year. He's there for a year with all the animals, and he doesn't have like the ability to walk out 50 meters or 100 meters or to make a minyan outside and, you know, in the garden. He's there under pressure for an entire year in darkness and hail and thunder. We don't know what, all the seasons are changing. But Hashem put him there for a reason. And the Mefarshim say it's because when he was supposed to come out, what zechut did he have? He rebuilt the world with chesed, with kindness. So there he was rebuilding. He was giving to the lion to eat, and to the elephant, and to all the different animals day in, day out. That's what he was doing all the time. He was giving chesed. He was giving of himself. When you give of yourself, you create worlds. When you want to create, when when a man and a woman get together, they want to create worlds. They want to have children. They want to create a new family. They want to create worlds. The same thing right now. If you look around, it's terrible what's going on. But the chesed, the kindness that's going on in the world. There's so many people going out there giving food and visiting the elderly and coming in. Be'ezrat Hashem will create a whole new great thing about it. I want to ask you a question. What is your view on older ladies, younger men? Age difference. Is there a thing halachically? Is there a thing? Would you advise younger men to go out with older ladies, or older ladies to entertain going out with younger men? Of course, there are more ladies in the world than men. It seems to be a singles crisis in the fact that men, obviously, there's always been this age gap. So men already 25 is looking for a 20-year-old or whatever it is. And then sometimes, unfortunately, certain girls or whatever can not find their way through. What's your take halachically and advisory on this?
I think common sense has to come into this. So first of all, if the age difference is very, very large, then that certainly presents a bigger problem. I write a column for Indian Magazine, which is the magazine of Hamadiyya. And interestingly, I wrote about a couple I met about 6 months ago. And he's 50 and she's 30 something. She just was confident that Hashem would eventually put her together with a fellow. He's a fabulous fellow. And there, when I went to see them, to interview them, there was their little baby. They were gloriously happy. And I don't think there's any, hard and fast rules. If the bigger the age difference, the more you'd have to discuss that with the rabbi or your friend, your advisor we talked about before. But it's not to say it's not doable. I've been married twice, as we said a couple of times. My first wife was 3 years older than me. And now my second wife, Lavdil, is 3 years younger than me. So I've been a cradle snatcher, and I married an older woman as well. The difference there, a few years really doesn't make any difference at all. If you were to see, a masterpiece, and it was a masterpiece, and that really a beautiful work of art, and it was just a little bit out your price range, you'll probably want to stretch yourself in order to accommodate and get that for yourself. Either way, but if it's a larger age difference, then certainly you might not. It might be the case you'll struggle to find common views. I mean, through 10 years is a tukufa. It's then people see things differently. You've got to make sure that you're on, as the Americans say, on the same page, that you're able to shared values. The values of people in my generation are very different to the values of my grandchildren or my children. So we'll have to make sure you can bridge that gap. But it's not insurmountable. But the longer the age difference, then certainly you need a little bit more input and advice to make sure that it's not too big a gap.
Amazing. We'll finish with one question on the young married couples. That Tal, as you've experienced, we mentioned before, you came to Oxford and really inspired us over there. And people have advanced, but now they find themselves in these relationships where they were used to going out, but both husband and wife are normally working, and the kids are in the schools or they're wherever they are. We also run. We don't know if you're following, but Baruch Hashem, we've grown so much that Bezrat Hashem, we're having soon premises in Fortune. We have a new Tal center that's going to be a communal center where it's going to be a hub for everybody to come. invite you in person, Bezrat Hashem, to come and join us. And the young married couples are finding it, let me put it this way, tough. Some of them have gone onto social media, just doing videos or whatever. You can see that they're finding the strength, like funny videos, like opening their house to the world kind of thing. You can see there's a lot of strain.
Yeah.
What can we advise them doing? What should people be doing? How can we strengthen the relationship of love that people have found and nurture it during this time?
Oh, I'm very glad you asked me that. I'm thinking about it as you're asking and developing the question. Look, there's a model here, and the model is Jewish marriage. And there's a surprise. I have been very happily married twice. And I've got a family full of happily married people, so I get to see how this works. A Jewish marriage is not a situation where you're joined at the hip. In fact, as we know, because of that most wonderful, wonderful invention called Tarat Mishpacha, there's a period in the month where there's a separation, a very much turning down the volume of the connection and the relationship between husband and wife. And really, if I could give a gift to the world, the Ramban famously says, you all know, that one of the great gifts of Klal Yisrael to the world is Shabbat. Now, that doesn't mean to say non-Jewish people have to keep Shabbat the way that we do, but the fact that you don't have to work 365 and a quarter days of the year for the rest of your life like they do in Japan means that they could rest. That, you could focus on maybe yourself. That was a great gift. But if I could just give the world Tarat Mishpacha, where you could dial down the relationship, where you could get a little bit of time on your own. Because in a relationship, even a great marriage, you still need time for yourself, a time to be alone. The coronavirus and the lockdown, which seems to be easing in the UK more than around here at the moment, means that you have been, in the UK, I see when I keep in touch with my kids, forced artificially to be together in a way that is not natural. Not Jewishly natural. Men are supposed to go out to work. That's the whole klala from Adam Rishon. Wives are supposed to have their role. We don't lose our individuality, even the closest of marriage, and we still need our own time for the individuality. So first of all, I would say, don't beat yourself up if you've thought to yourself, I just wish he'd go away, right? Or vice versa. And you need space. And that space has been denied us. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your marriage. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your relationship. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with the situation that we find ourselves in. That's abnormal. You're normal. A healthy marriage still, a Jewish marriage still wants the couple to have time for themselves, to strengthen themselves and to think about themselves as well, and how they can, when they rejoin each other, come back together again, how they can enhance that experience. So I don't think you should, I can imagine lots of people are feeling, gosh, and maybe a lot of argument. And, there's been a lot in the media about spousal abuse, which hopefully doesn't apply to anybody watching this. But in Israel, both communities, our community and the Arabs, etc., there's been a lot of spousal abuse there. And okay, I get that because it's not natural. So don't beat yourself up that you find yourself, struggling. Maybe you swim nicely, you go to the swimming bath. My last scuba diving trip, I'm a scuba diver, was a disaster because the water, suddenly we hit with a storm and we're all over the place and sea things. The situation was wrong. Nothing wrong with my diving abilities. Nothing wrong with your marriage abilities. It's just we're all going through a bit of a storm at the moment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Please God, we'll weather the storm and we will see only good times. Rabbi Y.Y. Rubinstein, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us all the way from New York. Hashem should give you strength, health, happiness, success. A lot of people logged on and really, really sending you a big thank you from London.
Thank you to you. It's been great seeing you again. And great hatzlacha in your new center. I will look forward very much to visiting.
We're looking forward. God bless. Hatzlacha.